I want to start today with something that might make you uncomfortable.
More uncomfortable than usual?
Yeah, I want you to picture your kid, or your niece, your little brother, someone you'd step in front of a bus for without thinking.
Okay.
Now imagine someone knocks on your door at 6 a.m. Badge, uniform, legal authority. They're here for that person. Not because they committed a crime, because your kid went to the wrong protest, because your sister posted the wrong thing, because your dad's name is on a donor list, for an organization that just got reclassified as a threat, because your wife is a journalist who wrote about the wrong person.
Okay, but
And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's not me, that's ICE. That's about illegals, right? That's the first place your brain goes. Someone else's door. Someone who shouldn't have been here in the first place. That's the compartment your brain just built so you can keep listening without your heart rate going up.
that's, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I know. Everyone does. That's the whole mechanism. It's not about me is the sentence that lets every single step happen. It was never about you until it was. And I need you to stop building that wall for the next 20 minutes. I'm not talking about undocumented immigrants. I'm talking about your kid, your actual kid, with a bedroom down the hall and a phone full of opinions. That kid, that door, that morning.
All right, so what's the argument?
The argument is that most people, specifically most people on the left side of American politics, have already decided they would resist authoritarianism. They believe this about themselves, and they're wrong, not because they're bad people, because they've never been tested, and the test isn't going to look like they think it looks.
What do they think it looks like?
They think it looks like a moment. One big obvious moment where the mask drops, the music stops, and everyone agrees, okay, this is it, this is the line. And then the righteous response happens. The marches, the resistance, the whole movie version.
And what does it actually look like?
It looks like Tuesday. It looks like a policy you half read about while scrolling. It looks like something happening to someone you don't know, in a state you've never been to, and you feel a flicker of, that's not right. And then your kid needs to be picked up from soccer and the flicker dies. It looks like your friend saying, did you see that thing? And you saying, yeah, that's crazy. And then you both move on with your lives. Multiply that by 100 million people in about 3 years. That's what it actually looks like.
The slow version.
The slow version. And the slow version works precisely because it never triggers the response. Every step has a justification. Every escalation has a legal framework. The Insurrection Act lets a president define what counts as an insurrection. Not Congress, not courts, the president. That's already law. It's sitting right there.
So when people say the institutions will hold,
Some of them held once. On January 6th, courts held. Military leadership held. But they held because the ask was chaotic. It was a mob, not an order. Nobody with stars on their shoulders was given a lawful command to deploy troops for the wrong side. That's a completely different scenario. When the order comes through proper channels, wrapped in legal language, compliance isn't cowardice. It's the default. Refusal is the thing that requires extraordinary courage. And most people don't have extraordinary courage. That's not an insult. That's just human.
what about the military specifically?
There's a split that nobody talks about, honestly. Officer culture, especially senior officers, has a genuine tradition of constitutional loyalty. Oath to the document, not the person. But enlisted culture is different. And here's the thing that matters. Generals don't kick down doors. Sergeants do. The values at the top of the chain and the values at the bottom of the chain are not the same values.
And police?
Are we going to pretend this is a question? Police unions endorse Trump overwhelmingly. The cultural alignment between law enforcement and authoritarian politics is not a secret. It's just something polite people don't say at dinner. These are the people who show up at your door, and they are ready.
And here's the thing. This isn't theoretical. We're watching the machinery run right now, in real time.
Venezuela, Iran, 2 active military operations, neither with a congressional declaration of war. And the public response has been, what? A news cycle? A couple of op-eds?
Venezuela. The U.S. sent troops into a sovereign country to... What was the stated reason?
Does it matter? The point is, the executive branch deployed military force unilaterally, and the country shrugged. Not because people support it, because it's over there. It's someone else's country, someone else's kids. Iran. were conducting active military strikes, and most Americans couldn't tell you the justification if you asked them at the grocery store.
And the connection to what we're talking about is
The connection is that every time the executive uses force without consequence, the muscle gets stronger. The precedent gets set. The public gets more comfortable with the idea that one person can point the military at a target and nobody gets a vote. Right now, the target is overseas, but the muscle doesn't know the difference. The legal framework doesn't know the difference. The Insurrection Act doesn't say, except domestically.
so Venezuela and Iran aren't separate stories.
They're the rehearsal. And nobody's treating them that way because the bombs are falling on people who don't look like your neighbors. That's the whole game. It's always over there, until it isn't.
Okay, so let's talk about the opposition. Because if the guardrails are weaker than people think,
Then the question is what the opposition actually brings. And this is where I need people to hear something they're going to hate.
go.
The American left has made nonviolence into an identity, not a strategy, an identity. And there's a difference that matters. When nonviolence is a strategy, you're choosing it because it's the most effective tool for your situation. You're calculating. You're thinking about leverage. When it's an identity, you're committed to it regardless of whether it works. And your opponent knows that.
Knows what exactly?
Knows your ceiling. If I'm in power and I know that the absolute worst thing you'll do is march on a Saturday and then go home, I know exactly how much pressure I need to absorb. And the answer is not much. The cost of bad press and some signs on the sidewalk is a cost every regime in history has been able to eat for breakfast.
But the civil rights movement.
The civil rights movement is taught as a pure, nonviolent victory. And look, it's not wrong, but it's dangerously incomplete. The legislative wins happened in a context where cities were burning. The riots weren't the movement's official strategy, but they were part of the landscape. The implicit message to power wasn't just, we have moral authority. It was, the alternative to negotiating with us is a country that becomes ungovernable. Gandhi, same thing. The British didn't leave India because of a moral epiphany. The empire was collapsing. Maintaining control was becoming more expensive than letting go. The movement made it more expensive. That's the mechanism.
So you're saying the current protests don't impose costs.
I'm saying power respects power. It does not respect appeals to its conscience. A general strike shuts down an economy. State governments refusing to comply with federal orders creates genuine institutional friction. Judges refusing to process certain orders, that's real. Signs on the National Mall on a Saturday, that's a hobby. That's opposition as self-expression. And self-expression is fine, but it's not the same thing as resistance.
Can I bring up the thing nobody on the left wants to talk about?
Please.
The Second Amendment. The one constitutional right that was explicitly designed for this scenario. A check against government tyranny. And the side of the political spectrum most terrified of government tyranny has spent decades treating it as the other team's symbol.
Yeah, that's the irony that should keep people up at night. The most armed civilian population in human history, and it skews overwhelmingly toward the side that's least concerned about authoritarian overreach. The people most worried about fascism have culturally committed to being unarmed against it.
And I'm not saying go buy a rifle.
No, but you have to at least acknowledge what it means strategically. We just talked about how power respects power, how nonviolence only works when the alternative is visible. The Second Amendment is the alternative the founders wrote into the system. It's literally there for the scenario we've been describing for the last 15 minutes. And the left has pretended it doesn't apply to them.
Because guns became a cultural identity marker on the right.
Right. And the left let that happen. They ceded an entire constitutional right because it felt like the other team's thing. And now you've got a situation where the people most likely to need a credible deterrent against state violence are the ones who made it a point of pride to have none. That's not a moral victory. That's a strategic catastrophe.
This is going to get clipped out of context.
Probably. But the question isn't whether it sounds comfortable. The question is whether it's true. And the founders, whatever you think of them, were not confused about why they put it second on the list. It wasn't for hunting. It wasn't for home defense. It was for this.
There's another piece of this we haven't said out loud.
The money.
The money. There are billionaires actively funding this, not passively benefiting, actively architecting it. And beneath them, A whole layer of operatives, media figures, think tank executives, political staffers, the lackeys, whose careers and livelihoods depend on keeping this machine running.
And they're not afraid.
No, they're not. And why would they be? What has the left done that would make a billionaire funding authoritarian politics lose a single night of sleep? They'll get a hashtag trending against them, maybe a protest outside their office that disperses by 5 p.m. Their stock might dip for a news cycle. That's it. That's the total cost.
Meanwhile, they're buying media companies, funding judicial campaigns, bankrolling state legislature races, writing model legislation. They're playing the game at the infrastructure level. And the opposition is playing it at the awareness level. Those aren't the same game.
It's like bringing a petition to a knife fight.
It's worse than that. It's bringing a petition to a knife fight and feeling morally superior about it. The billionaire class backing this movement has done the math. The math says the left will not make it costly enough to stop. And so far, that math has been correct. Every single time.
So when we talk about the opposition having no teeth,
We're not just talking about marches that go home. We're talking about an entire power structure. The donor class, the operatives, the media ecosystem that has looked at what the left is willing to do and concluded correctly that it's not a threat. Not to their money, not to their freedom, not to their safety, not to anything they actually care about.
I want to push back here though, because there's something else going on with the coalition that's currently in power.
Go ahead.
A huge chunk of the support base depends on plausible deniability. He didn't mean it like that. That's just tough talk. The institutions will check him. There are millions of people whose support is contingent on ambiguity. They're fine with the direction as long as they can tell themselves it's still normal.
And your argument is that going overt would crack that coalition.
Yes, the suburban voter who's fine with tax cuts and strong borders, but would genuinely recoil at political prisoners. That person exists. There are a lot of them. They're your neighbors, they're at your kid's school. They voted for this, and they'd tell you they didn't vote for that. The regime stays in the gray zone partly because it works, but also because going overt has real costs within its own coalition.
I agree that's a real factor. And it's exactly why the slow version is more dangerous than the dramatic version. You never crack the coalition because you never go overt. You just keep moving the gray zone. What was overt 5 years ago is normal now. What's normal now will be baseline in 2 years. The coalition doesn't need to accept political prisoners on day one. They just need to accept each step. And by the time you're there, the people who would have flinched have already been flinching for so long, they forgot what standing up straight felt like.
The Weimar problem.
Read the timeline of how norms collapsed in Germany. What's striking isn't the speed, it's that every single step had its own justification. Emergency powers because of the Reichstag fire, press restrictions for national security, civil service purges for loyalty concerns. Every step sounded reasonable to the people who needed it to sound reasonable. And the people who saw it coming couldn't convince the people who didn't.
Because accepting what's happening means accepting your whole life is about to change.
Denial is psychologically free. Seeing clearly is expensive. It can't happen here isn't an argument. It's anesthesia, and you're on it right now. Listening to this and thinking, yeah, but not really. That's the anesthesia working.
All right, so bring it back. You started with the kid.
Yeah, I started there because I think that's the only thing that actually breaks through. We've been having this conversation at the level of institutions, norms, political science. None of that wakes anyone up. You know what wakes people up? Thinking about their daughter being put on a list, their son being detained for what he posted, their mother's medication being cut because she's in the wrong demographic for the new healthcare policy, their spouse losing a job for refusing to sign a loyalty oath.
You think people need to feel personally threatened before they act?
I think history says yes. And I think that's a brutal indictment of human nature, but pretending otherwise hasn't worked. The comfortable left, and I'm using comfortable deliberately, has been operating under the assumption that caring is the same as acting. It's not. Caring is free. Posting is free. Changing your profile picture is free. Sharing an article with a sad emoji is free. Acting costs something. And the reason people don't act isn't that they don't care. It's that acting would require them to risk the comfort that lets them care from a safe distance. Your comfort is the product. Your inaction is the price they already factored in.
So what does it actually take?
Honestly, I think for most people it takes the knock on their door, not someone else's door, theirs. And by then, it's usually too late because the infrastructure is already built, the legal frameworks are already in place, and the people who would have helped you are already gone.
That's basically the Niemöller poem.
First, they came for, yeah, and everybody knows that poem. Everybody nods along to it. And almost nobody applies it to themselves in real time. Because applying it in real time means admitting you're in the poem right now, not historically, not hypothetically, right now. And your kid is in it too.
So what do people actually do? Because we can't just end on, you're all going to sleepwalk into it.
I think the first step is this. Stop performing opposition and start practicing it. That means knowing what a general strike is and being willing to participate in one. That means your state attorney general becoming a figure you actually pay attention to, because state noncompliance is one of the few structural checks that has real teeth. It means building networks now, not Twitter followers, actual networks of people who will show up at a courthouse, not for a photo op, but to physically prevent an unlawful action.
That's asking a lot of people who can barely organize a carpool.
Yeah, it is. And that's the whole problem. The effort required to resist something is always greater than the effort required to let it happen. That asymmetry is what every authoritarian in history has relied on.
So where does that leave us?
It leaves us in the most honest place I can put us. There is no line in the sand that exists on its own. Lines are drawn by people willing to pay the cost of drawing them. Judges risking careers, officers risking courts-martial, parents risking their safety for their kids. And right now, most people are not there. They think they are. They believe it about themselves. But belief isn't tested until the cost is real.
And the cost isn't real yet. For most people.
No, not yet. And by the time it is, by the time it's your kid, your door, your name on a list, you're going to look around for the movement that should have been built 5 years earlier. And it won't be there. Because everyone was waiting for the line. And the line was waiting for them.
Nobody draws it.
Nobody ever does. Until it's too late to matter. And somewhere right now, a family is sitting at a dinner table that they don't know is about to be their last normal dinner. And they won't know until later. And you won't help them. Because it's not your table, not your family, not your door. Not yet.
So the question isn't really where's the line. The question is, what would you actually do tomorrow morning? Not what do you believe. What would you do?
And if the honest answer is nothing different, then you already know which side of this you're on. You just haven't admitted it yet.